Hi there, I'm Teresa Marone, and I'm the Learn To Queen. The niche and passion of my expertise is creating conscious content in the self-help and personal development fields, because I truly believe that conscious content creation by people like you is changing the world. Join me and my guest expert collaboration partners for an inside look at the problem-solving industry. We want to help you so that you can help others.
Hey, it's Teresa Marone, the Learn To Queen, and I recently ran into Rob Greenlee of Spreaker.com, and he was sharing some insights with me about the so-called podcast revolution. I mean, he's been around podcasting for over 10 years, and he's played in the sandbox with some pretty big friends, like Microsoft during the Zune days. He's been the ETO and the CTO for Podcast One. He still consults with them. And he's just been named head of content for Spreaker.com, our sponsor. So I was asking him, what's really important for new podcasters to focus on? What's hot right now? What are listeners really looking for? And his answers were so riveting. I said, Rob, can I record this? He said, sure. And this is that interview. Listen in.
Rob, you have such interesting insights about the podcast revolution. Tell me, is this something that information just comes to you, or do you go out and have certain contacts that you talk to regularly to make sure that you are one up on the competition?
Well, I just stay plugged into the space. It's my daily job, and I've been a content producer for 10 years, and I've been doing podcasting and on-demand radio shows for a very long time. I started doing a show in a radio station back in 1999 called Web Talk Radio, and I've just continued on that path. I got a marketing degree in college, and always thought of that the web and the internet as a great kind of marketing medium, and podcasting and doing a radio show just became something that I had a passion about, and got connected to it, and I've just built a lot of friends and know a lot of people in the industry, just because of the fact I've been doing it for so long, and I've been working, at big platforms like, Zune podcasts, with Microsoft for 6 years, and I've worked, at a variety of other companies now with Spreaker, but I've been with Podcast One for about a year and a half or so as well.
That's awesome. Your show, the new media show, is it's really a great resource for people who want to stay up on the podcasting industry as well. Is that the goal of your show?
Yeah, I think that the goal that I have for the show, and I book all the guests for the show, is to connect people in the industry that are maybe new to the industry to the broader kind of podcast community. Bring on, CEOs and founders and those kind of folks that are new to the space, or that are people that have built a reputation in the space for doing great stuff in the space, and just have that as kind of like a showcase for them, because there really isn't too many. I think there's one other kind of podcast that tries to do that as well, and it's a podcast that's done by Midroll, that it's called The Wolf Den, and they bring on similar types of guests. I've been on that show as well. There's not too many kind of podcasting podcasts that I haven't been on. If I think
really?
back on it, yeah.
As you think back on it. No, your show is an incredible resource for people who are wanting to really get a broad spectrum of what's going on, because I think a lot of podcast hosts get into it. They're very technical. They love the idea of the latest software and the latest hardware. And then there's other people that are really more, they're idea-based and message-based, and they're the ones that, when those two worlds collide, sometimes there's a little bit of friction. So a show like yours is the kind of resource that I look for. I mean, personally, I really like it.
Well, thank you.
Oh, you bet. It's a good show. But let's address some of the people who are coming into the podcast industry right now. What would you think would be 2 or 3 of the most important things to focus on, so that they don't spin their wheels, run around chasing things that aren't really that important?
Yeah, I think it's really very simple. I just think focusing on the quality of the content that you're making, and adding value to your audience. I mean, podcasting is a very much a personal medium. It's something that people listen to because they like the hosts, or they are very passionate about the same topics. It's very different than radio, which is kind of a tune in, tune out kind of a thing, and it's the hit driven thing, and it's where podcasting is much more organic. It's much more conversations. It's getting into kind of reality. It's almost like a form of a reality, as we all know, TV, where you're dealing with real people. You're not dealing with scripts and things that have been made up. You're dealing with the real world, and that oftentimes is more compelling than something that's kind of fictional based or not as authentic. And I think that's the key thing that you need to think about. And then just the overall presentation of your podcast, your cover art, make it engaging, make it communicate very quickly what the show's about, have large text on it to communicate in a whole bunch of different sizes that range from, now with iTunes, 3,000 by 3,000 pixels is their current spec that they're putting out there at, in a minimum size of 1,400 by 1,400 size. So that's the first thing that most listeners see is your cover art or your graphics. And then also having a good description, series as well as the episode descriptions that does a good job of selling your show and driving keywords that are important for Google and Bing and those platforms as well for people to find your show. And I think those are the most important things to actually think about.
I think you're right, and that's kind of the fun, creative part of it too. I mean, everybody has a certain unique place that they come from, and that's usually why someone wants to start a show, is they have a specific goal that they want to get out there. Mm-hmm. But the creative part is coming up with your show description and your title and getting your graphic arts. That's really, really fun. And then you get into the weekly grind, right, of marketing your show. And you're really good at that. Do you want to share some insight on that with our listeners?
Well, it's the weekly and daily grind of, just like you say, of once you have a show, what do you do with it? I mean, how do you build an audience, right? I mean, it's great to just put a show out, but the truth of the matter is just putting it out isn't good enough, and it's not going to build an audience. You have to get connected. You and your show need to get connected to people, and you need to get connected to the real world and other media as well. I mean, if become an expert in your area on other media as well, radio, TV, blogs, kind of print stuff. I mean, I would say print is not a huge thing these days, but just get yourself out there. If you're an expert in building or in growing marijuana, or there's all sorts of stuff that people are experts at, right? Go out there and share it with the world, and feel like you're trying to connect to people at a very personal level to help them too.
Sure. It always has to be a source of inspiration or information. In my mind, that's the real beauty of podcasting. And the other thing that you were saying, reality TV, that's great. I love reality TV. I have my little, dirty little secrets of things I really like to watch. But, you have to watch that. And with podcasting, you can hear some really great information or great conversation between people that can inspire you while you're working out, while you're cooking. It's a lot more flexible. And that's the thing that really got me out of the video world and into the podcasting world, is that it's just so usable. It serves a need. So do you have any last thoughts for our listeners today, Rob?
Well, I just think just follow your passions, and once you've launched your show, get it out there in as many places as you can. Get it in Stitcher, get it in, obviously you have to get it into iTunes, and you have to get it into as many platforms as you can. That was a big thing that I learned from the years of doing my radio show, is that I had to get it on as many radio stations and as many streaming platforms and even public radio stations. I mean, I made a shorter version of my show for for public radio, stripped out all the ads and the commercials, and it was all of a sudden a public radio show. So it's just really being creative and finding ways that you can stand out. I mean, it's such a crowded media space now. The noise level is so much higher than it was back in the mid 2000s. There's just so much, social media, Twitter, Facebook, all this stuff is just making it more difficult to build an audience. So you really have to stand out.
Well, congratulations on being named head of content for Spreaker.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
I think we're going to be seeing some great things from that platform, and I know it's my favorite.
Yeah, it was great to be on your show.
All right. Thank you, Rob. We'll be talking later.
Okay, thank you.
This is Teresa Marone, the Learn To Queen, and you just heard Rob Greenlee, head of content for Spreaker.com, sharing insights on the podcast revolution. Thanks so much for listening in.
Hi there, I'm Teresa Marone, and I'm the Learn To Queen. Join me and my guest expert collaboration partners for an inside look at the problem-solving industry. We want to help you so that you can help others.